Good morning. Dear sister, could we have a sound of the bell, please? The bell is the voice of the Buddha telling us to come back once again to the present moment, to recall, to recollect, to remember that we have this precious human birth and that we can manifest it in every single moment. Dear Thai, dear Noble Sangha, today is August 8th, 2017. We are in the second full day of our retreat at the Christine Center called Transforming Our Store Consciousness Working with Seeds. And this is a tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh, and we are very proud to be able to be part of Thich Nhat Hanh's continuation body. We heard him talk last night on a video here about how he will never die because he has a continuation body. And it is really true that we really feel that aliveness and that energy. And every single one of you is participating in that. Every single one of you is helping to keep Thai alive. And we thank you very much for that. My talk is entitled Skillful Means. And what we will do is talk about some things that we might do to live a happy life, to be at peace, to achieve enlightenment, whatever that is. Those are the basic things that people often talk about on this particular path. The first thing I would like to say is it's extraordinarily achievable. We have these ideas that when you take this up and if you actually read certain people, you will find that they talk about the austereness of the path. The Buddhists get a bad rap for that. They get a bad rap because you have to meditate with intense vigor and grit your teeth and sit on the cushion for 90 hours in a row. And those sorts of things. While Thai has told us that if you take one simple breath, and you do it, and you know that you are doing it, you are enlightened. It's that simple. So one of the things about my talk today, besides giving you some tools, is to hopefully encourage you to be able to know that this is absolutely doable. This is not strange, austere stuff. This is not for the 1%. This is for everybody. I'd like to start off by reading one of Thai's poems, The Good News. They don't publish the good news. The good news is published by us. We have a special edition, and you need to read it. The good news is that you are alive, and the linden tree is still there, standing firm in the harsh winter. The good news is that you have wonderful eyes to touch the blue sky. The good news is that your child is there before you, and your arms are available. Hugging is possible. They only print what is wrong. Look at each of our special editions. We always offer the things that are not wrong. We want you to benefit from them and protect them. The dandelion is there by the sidewalk, smiling its wondrous smile, singing the song of eternity. Listen, you have ears that can hear it. Bow your head, listen to it. Leave behind the world of sorrow and preoccupation and get free. The latest good news is that you can do it. So everyone can do this. Isn't that amazing? I've mentioned before on our opening talk that you're all Buddhas. And I guess the only thing that I'm giving here right now is, well, maybe we should start acting like it. And we're going to give you some tools for that. How's your successful retreat going so far? I've always said that, it is somewhat to do this path hard, but it's not hard like nuclear physics is hard. If you try to explain nuclear physics to somebody, it's like, huh? It's hard, and this is a good Midwestern thing that we all can appreciate. It's hard like shoveling snow is hard. There's not much conceptually to do about shoveling snow. We all know how to do it, but when you have that big pile and that long driveway, it's hard to do. You do one after another after another. So intention and perseverance are the real keys here. And hopefully you can see the fruits of your practice. But as it continues, your practice just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. So this is the wonderful gift that we have from this sort of precious human birth. I've been on retreat, I think last night, just because I wanted to be reasonably accurate. And I only going to be reasonably accurate because I can't remember if it's 10 or 11 times. But I've been on retreat with Ty 10 or 11 times. And, he has a wealth of knowledge. He has a wonderful way of talking about things. And sometimes he'll talk about the Eightfold Noble Path. Sometimes he'll talk about the 5 skandhas. He'll talk about all kinds of things, no self, nirvana. But in every retreat I've been on, he always has this little diagram about store consciousness and mind consciousness, which Paul started off with us so well yesterday. So in a very brief way of looking at this, I'm seeing if I'm really electrified here. I want to make sure that I don't mess anything up. Darn positive gravity planet. So there is this thing that we all talked about called store consciousness. Store consciousness has many things involved with it. It has lots of memories. It has lots of experience. It has very much habit energy. Lots and lots of habit energy. And store consciousness is often thought of in a variety of ways, like a garden or underseed. The way Ty often talks about it, it's kind of a mixed metaphor, as if it's a garden in your house, and that this is the basement. In the basement there are many things. So besides what you have here, you have these wonderful little things called seeds. Often the Sanskrit term for that, I believe, is bija. And Thich Nhat Hanh says traditionally there are 51 different types of seeds or things that can manifest as mental formations. Actually, he said there were 64 now because he added 13. Isn't that great? I think that's so wonderful about the Buddhist path is you can say, well, traditionally there's 51, but I want to add these 13. Can you imagine, if Pope Francis said, I want to tack on these 2 extra commandments. Is that okay with everybody? It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. So there are 51 or 64, and if you were starting from scratch, you might make a list of 112 or 13 or whatever. But there are all of these kind of hidden underneath manifestations of our mind. And we all have all 65 or 51 of these. And they all are hidden and down low. And as Paul has said yesterday, you're not even sure when they're all manifesting. Sometimes they're coming up, sometimes. Our mind is actually a whole way of coming and going with all of these things. So what happens, and we'll take the one, mind is what we are aware of right now. And the awareness may not always be completely in your consciousness. For example, your body may be aware that your leg is touching the chair, and that's an awareness, but you're not thinking about that kind of going. So let's take a really common one that everybody can relate to. Anger. A seed of anger is watered, and it manifests in our mind consciousness. It comes from our basement to our living room. There it is. So what do we mean by watering a seed of anger? Well, the conditions are sufficient for it to manifest. So that may be an unkind word, it may be a memory, it could be any of a variety of things, and it manifests in our consciousness. It stays a while in our consciousness, sometimes a minute, sometimes a decade. And after it is done, it returns to the store. And the interesting thing about sort of unobserved anger, our unobserved fear, our unobserved anxiety, is it will come back to the store consciousness a little stronger. So every time you water a seed of anger or fear, it comes back, it becomes a little stronger. And two things happen with that. Number one, on its next manifestation, it may be a little bit more powerful. And secondly, instead of needing like a whole watering can of water, it may need a single raindrop for this to manifest. And this kind of goes on and on and on. And especially with the ideas of anger, fear, despair, these happen all the time. People are always getting their seeds of anger water, or watering themselves, or fear, or anxiety, and they keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger. This is your life, many of you. It's certainly my life for a lot of the time before I found this path. And it is sometimes feels like a great trap that you cannot escape. And this is the good news. You can do this. You can transform this. You can do this. So the way that this is talked about in the manifestation in a mental formation is called a mental formation, or as Paul mentioned yesterday, samyujana. And if you like those nice, if you like bija, samyujana, this is manovishnya, this is alvishnya. If you like all those fancy words, they're in the book. And what really happens here is, in the practice, is a seed is watered, and it could be a good seed too. It could be a seed of compassion, of loving kindness, of joy. But let's just say, just to keep this close so we understand, it's a seed of anger again. Now, as soon as we can, as soon as we are aware, we water the seed of mindfulness. And the seed of mindfulness takes good care of our seed of anger. And when it takes good care of our seed of anger, now, when anger returns, it returns a little bit weaker. Maybe 0.01% weaker. Doesn't notice much. The next time anger comes around, you may not notice that there's much of a change. Just 0.01%. But guess what? Many of us are very fortunate to have the opportunity to practice this a lot. And therefore, we can always kind of notice, and just notice with the lightest touch, how that is. By the way, I wanted to mention parenthetically that Paul mentioned yesterday about this, about how the concept is so agricultural because everybody knew about that from the standpoint of seeds entering into a garden, and everybody could understand going above ground and everything else. In a book that I read called Being Peace, Thich Nhat Hanh uses the same thing, and he talks about a person living in your basement who has a whole array of video cassettes and comes into your living room and pops in a video cassette that you have to watch. Well, that lasted about 30 years for that particular analogy. So, but it's interesting how that all is. As you might guess, the question that often comes up is, how do I do this? I understand that this will be useful for me. How do I do this? And there are several things that are kind of roadblocks that we can work with. Here's my book. You can tell it's got coffee stains and dog ears and everything else. I think this book was written in 2006, and it's been at my bedside a lot. I've used this a lot. It's got all kinds of markings and everything else in it. And it used to be called Transformation at the Base. I really wish he hadn't changed the title, because that's the practice. What do I mean at the base? The sooner you get on top of that, the better off you are. The earlier you recognize it, the better off you will be. And it doesn't, if you get angry and you notice, oh, I'm angry, and I got angry 5 minutes ago, is it useless to use your mindfulness? No, not at all. It certainly helps to get on top of it right away. The other thing that's really interesting is, as our minds are what we call homeostatic. What do I mean by that? They want to promote the good things and delete the things that cause us to suffer. Our mind really does want to do that, even though there are parts of our mind that seem not to. So if you water, if a seed of goodness, something has come up that's very joyful for you, you're experiencing the wonderful feel of seeing the full moon last night, or of the deer sharing our walking meditation, and you have that sort of joy, then you can water that. It's very interesting, though, but we don't do that very much, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more further on in the talk. We're always aware of our difficulties. Jack Kornfield talks about how he talks to people about how when you are, that he has an exercise, think of 2 good times when you did something really good. And just as an exercise in a room like this, people have an extraordinarily hard time doing that. We all, I mean, if I tell you right now, find 2 things where you messed up. Oh, right on the top of your, oh yeah, I did this, I did that, you know. So whatever, it really happens that way. We have this negativity bias in our brains. And yet, every single one, without knowing you all individually, I know many of you very well, but some of you not at all, I can guarantee you have done heroic things. You have helped a friend out in need, you have lifted somebody up, you have loaned somebody money when they were down and out, you gave them shelter, a shoulder to cry on, all sorts of things. And you never remember those things. We're going to talk about gardening here, once again, in a little bit further on in the talk. But here it is. This is all we really have to do, is do this particular thing. And we take good care. The seed of mindfulness, in my mind, is to really sit back and pay attention. You pay attention to what is going on right here, right now. As I mentioned yesterday during the afternoon session, I think one of the big things that we fall down is bodyfulness. I think bodyfulness may be at least as important as mindfulness. We are at the whim of 19th century British anthropologists when we decide what these words mean. In other words, the British anthropologists, who really seemed, you would think they'd have a good heart when they were doing this, when actually they just really wanted to conquer the people, but they said, well, we're going to go into India, we need to know what they're about, so we're going to learn everything about them. So they learned everything about their religions, including, Hinduism and Buddhism. And they translated the term smriti as mindfulness, which isn't exactly inaccurate. But at least in 21st century America, or maybe the 21st century world, everywhere, mindfulness means between our 2 ears. We notice our thoughts. We notice all that sort of stuff. We notice this really, and it's really busy and loud in there, isn't it? So of course we notice that. Perhaps maybe if we get back to our body, we can do that a little bit more. Because all mental formations, anger, fear, despair, depression, anxiety, as well as joy and happiness and compassion, have only 2 components, only 2. They have thoughts and body sensations, that's the totality of it. And if we don't pay attention to the body sensations, I'm not sure we're going to get very far. So I had to remember counseling someone who had a problem with anger. And he said, I get angry every day. I get angry 10 times a day. And I said, well, how does it feel? And then they came up with all of those synonyms. I feel furious. I feel, really annoyed. I just can't believe it. I feel self-righteous and all this other sort of stuff. And I said, but how do you feel? And he starts going off again. He says, no, stop. What does your body do? And this person who had spent maybe a couple decades of being angry 10 times a day had to really think very hard. What really was going on in his body with that time thing? He didn't really know. And I think that's where the error was often made. So when we talk about being aware, when we talk about watering the seed of mindfulness, we want to water it as quickly as we can. And again, this is something that everybody can do. That's how you become enlightened. You pay attention to what is happening in the present moment. But it's not easy, and we have to practice. We have to take one more pile of snow to clear our driveway here to be able to do this sort of thing. But it's very doable. There's also another little phrase about enlightenment, about a turtle and a yellow ring on the ocean. Does anybody know about this one? There is an idea. How easy is it to be with enlightenment? How easy is it to achieve enlightenment? They say enlightenment is as easy as if you were a turtle on the ocean and you popped and there was one yellow ring, and you just at that moment when you came to the surface, you popped up into the yellow ring. Boy, that sure sounds difficult, doesn't it? So I'm saying when people say that, as opposed to what I'm saying about this being quite easy and ordinary, they're both right. And I'll get to a reason for that in just a minute as well. So the idea here is that we can all do this. It's just a chance to practice on our daily lives. We do sitting, we do walking, we do mindful listening. We try to become as mindful as we can. The Buddha said there are 84,000 Dharma doors. There are 84,000 ways to do this. When I teach a class, I have 50. I guess I've got 50 to continue to do, but there are certainly many ways. So we do a lot of sitting meditation, but if you're not a person who likes sitting meditation, and Ty has said this, in one of his quick Q&As at a retreat, someone asked him, Ty, I've tried, I can't do sitting meditation. I just can't do it. And he said, well, then don't do it. Which then I said, oh my God, they're going to kick him out of the Zen teacher school. When those Zen teachers tell you must glue yourself to the cushion for 10 hours a day, you must do these rough sesshin. You can be mindful in all kinds of ways. You can pay attention to the Dharma talks that you get from the wonderful nature that is around us. And look in a person's eyes. You can see the colors. You can taste water. Isn't that amazing? Just fresh water. It can be such a delight. This simple act of drinking the water and doing nothing but drinking the water can be enlightenment. So one by one, I think we'll just kind of go over the list here of the 8 ways to water seeds for a happy life. And number 1 is the one that's in this model that we all talk about. Water the seed of mindfulness when other seeds enter your mind consciousness, especially unwholesome ones. So I think it's really important to do it for almost everything. As Paul was mentioning, it's real easy that we understand that, when someone at work has let us down and you're really mad at them, that you need to water your seeds and be aware of that. But it's also like if, somebody gets to a parking space before you do and you're a little annoyed, to notice that as well. Just notice. We're all really good Americans. We all just have to decide that we're going to solve this problem. So we're all very proactive and we want to do a lot of activity. We want to do something. Yes, I noticed my seed of anger. Now I want to do something. Don't. Actually, the entire effort, which is why this gets to be difficult for somebody, is to just observe. Oh, here it is. Well, I'm angry. Gosh, I noticed that my jaw is clenched and my throat is dry and my chest is tight. Isn't that interesting? Without necessarily trying to change it, without necessarily trying to do anything. Or, oh, I'm angry. I have this thought once again. I had a mother once who I was instructing on mindfulness who at a homeless shelter, and she was one of your typical poor people who probably had no more than an 8th grade education and clearly had lots of difficulties in her life. But she made the most mindful comment that I remember to this day. She said, you know, whenever I'm angry, like if I'm angry at my caseworker or the police or my partner or anybody, my kids pop into my head. She clearly had some difficulties with that sort of thing, but she recognized that that was what happened. There it is. And I think that she also might have had the idea, that's all it is. I don't know why my kids are there, but they're there. And just to kind of notice that. It was very interesting that she actually was aware of that. And I think that we worked a little bit on how her relationship was with her kids and why her kids made her angry and why when everyone else made her angry that she was reminded of her kids. All kinds of funny stuff come up when you have emotions, don't they? Oh my goodness. Probably one of my most... So when I started practicing, and maybe other people have heard this story or have had this experience. Yeah, when you sit on the cushion, you expect that you're going to have anger, resentment. You think you're going to, and you're also going to have times when you come up with some blissful moments as well. And you kind of expect those things, and those things do happen. But what I didn't really expect, and still happens to this day, is embarrassment. I will come up and just be sitting there, and all of a sudden, I'll think of something I did really stupid when I was 10 years old. I did it, and it'll just come up in the cushion. I said, wow, what are you doing here? Now, you can try to dig for the why, and that's what I think a lot of people will do, is try to dig for the why. You don't need to do that. Just be with it. That's the whole practice. The practice is a little bit difficult in the fact that, as I said before, every time you observe some difficulties, that 1%, it's only that 0.01%. So you have to keep doing it over and over again. So your intention and your persistence is very important. The way I like this is a wonderful poem by Rumi about how to water seeds of affliction, called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever come, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Wow. Entertain them all. I would almost go to say, especially if they're a crowd of sorrows. Can you imagine somebody ringing your doorbell? Excuse me, I want to sweep your house empty of its furniture. Do you mind? That sort of thing that goes on. This is how we grow. This is how we tend our garden, is to accept everything. And many people who have dealt with this practice have said, even when you have those really difficult conditions, even the people who have PTSD and childhood trauma, they have this something that they can work with. For many people, these seeds of anger are very difficult to deal with because they are so strong. Not everybody has everybody has the same seeds, but the seeds are stronger in certain people than other. But whether you are someone who has a very touchy and large seed of anger or a small one, the process is the same. When I have people who say, but my anger is so intense and it dominates my life. And I say, but you continue to practice. It's like melting ice. That's a wonderful image that Charlotte Joko Beck, a wonderful Zen teacher, has about practice as melting ice. So if we want to melt the ice, we need heat. And perhaps your anger is maybe just one of those little kind of igloo chest things full of ice. There's not much to it. Or perhaps it's an iceberg. And perhaps your practice is only a little Zippo lighter. It doesn't matter. You start to melt the iceberg with the Zippo lighter. Maybe your iceberg will continue to melt on its own. And maybe your practice will deepen so that you'll have something greater than a Zippo lighter. But the practice is the same. The practice is the same no matter how it is. I've been reading a little bit lately about hunter-gatherers. They're very interesting. One of the things about hunter-gatherers in modern societies is how wonderful they are to their interior group. The amount of fairness. For people who aren't aware, hunter-gatherers are usually in groups of less than 150 people. Right now they live in the wilderness in various places in Asia, some in Africa. And they have their own little society. It's very interesting. They have no governments. There's nobody who puts anybody in jail. There's no police. They just agree on everything. But yet, this is how we lived until the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago. So for roughly 190,000 years, we lived as hunter-gatherers. As hunter-gatherers, you have this basic idea of if something unexpected happens, we will be suspicious. You are a hunter-gatherer on the savannah in Africa, and you hear a little rustle in the bushes. Now, the optimistic person would say, wow, this could be like a small little animal, like a rabbit or a squirrel I could catch. We could eat that. Or this might be my friend Og, who has come to hunt with me. Won't that be great to hunt with Og? Or this could be, a woman that I can get to know and mate with and all kinds of stuff. So the optimist goes running into the bushes. If he's right, terrific. Goes on. If he's wrong, and it's really the tiger or the bear, he no longer gets to procreate. The suspicious hunter-gatherer from the savannah 200,000 years ago hears the rustle and says, yeah, it might be something good, but, it might be the bear or the tiger or somebody from another tribe who wants to go to war with us. I'm staying away. And they survived. So for 190,000 years, this seed of consciousness, of anger, fear, suspicion, has been watered. And it is a thing that is not just what happens to us now. It is part of our birthright from our parents, from our long, long ago line. We have been bred to be suspicious, angry, fearful, to worry unnecessarily. And this worked very well when we were hunter-gatherers. 10,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution came about. And even though I won't go through all the details about all of that, suddenly we had cities and states and nations and civilizations. And all of those things are wonderful. I mean, because of civilization, we have this wonderful center to be in here. But now all of a sudden we needed things like governments and borders, I mean, is there really a border between like Wisconsin and Illinois? I mean, if you walk from Wisconsin to Illinois, does things change? Does the color of the grass change? I mean, it's all artificial. It's all stuff that we make. And we kind of do. But there is a new era here. This is the Anthropocene era. This is the era of human connectivity. It has been happening slowly over the last 10,000 years, but it has accelerated now. We, as human beings, are becoming a collective organism. The way humans work today is much more like a beehive or an anthill than individual hunter-gatherer groups. And the sooner we know that, the sooner off we'll be. So this consciousness is not just our consciousness, it's a collective consciousness. This consciousness, so in the store consciousness, for example, one of the things in all of our store consciousness is the language English. We're all speaking English. At least I think everybody understands me, everybody in the room, we are speaking English. And so English is part of the store consciousness of every single person in this room. And when I say the word orange, which some people may know, things come to mind immediately. It's a color, it's a fruit. It doesn't rhyme with anything. I mean, all these kinds of things just come to us automatically. And we've had that store consciousness. Now, with language, it's fairly easy, but we also have things that whenever we have a store consciousness that cause a lot of immediate associations too. I would imagine in this group we get a different group than we would have said if we used the word Republican or Donald Trump. We have a different sort of store consciousness that other people might have, but we still have a collective consciousness about that. As Paul was saying yesterday, we all have a collective consciousness about what New York City is. And yet, when we travel to New York City and do things, we can't change. And there's 8 million people in New York City, and every single one of them has a different viewpoint of New York City. There's not a single correlation of all of that. We make the world in so many ways with that. But there is a commonality to that. So if you take people in New York City and say, is there a Central Park? Yes, where is Central Park? They would know. There's that commonality as well. So at any rate, the first thing we do is to take care of ourselves. And there are two other things that we're going to talk about tonight too. I have some videos about this. The second thing that I think we don't do, as I say, we have this great negativity bias, is we don't water our wholesome seeds. Why don't we do that? Like I say, I just told you you were all heroes in your lives, that you've done things. And I'll bet as you did that, you had to really crank through your memory, trying to remember when you really were heroic, when you really did do something, and those kinds of things. We often have these ideas that are hard to bring up because we have these memories of things that are going on that really were wonderful things, and we just tend to forget them. They tend to fall into the background. We don't know that. This precious human birth has had a lot of wonderful experiences. We may forget about the full moon in a month or two or a year. We may forget many of the wonderful things that are happening on this retreat or in our lives unless we make an effort to do so. In many ways, when we don't water the positive seeds, it's like having a garden of just dirt. And we're doing really well at removing all the weeds, but we haven't planted any flowers. We need to plant flowers. I mean, let's face it, guys, you're Buddhas. I mean, come on, you know? Yeah, pat yourself on the back for being a Buddha. Pat yourself on the back for being part of that precious human birth. And not just being part of that precious human birth, but manifesting it. You manifested it by coming here. You didn't have to be here. You could be home on your couch watching the Brewers Twins. You could be anywhere else, but you decided to come here and support this gathering and to be part of this particular community. Pat yourself on the back for that. So we need to kind of do that. And again, I have a little video. The video I'm doing tonight will be by 3 people who are not in the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition that will help us kind of do those sorts of things. So we need to water wholesome seeds in our environment. I have this thing where I will often stop and getting back to the body. So something wonderful happens to me, something really unexpected. And I say, wow, that was really good. I stop and take an inventory. What's going on in my body and mind right now? And try to put it in my memory. Because your memory is Velcro for all of the bad things that you've ever done. And it is Teflon for all of the good. So you have to work on that. Build your garden. Don't just remove the weeds. Plant some flowers. Plant some good fruit trees, right, that you can get some fruit from. Go with that particular thing. And one of our wonderful travelers on the path, not in the tradition, Rick Hansen, has wonderful ways to do that, and we'll be talking about tonight. Number 3, refrain from watering unwholesome seeds. This is part of the mindfulness trainings that Ty talks about to avoid difficult conversations, toxic conversations, he calls, and toxic situations. I think people really understand this, people who have been through difficult times like addictions, right? So even if you have lots of good friends at the bar where you used to get drunk, you want to go back and visit because they're nice people, aren't they? Not a good idea. You're watering those unwholesome seeds. I think a lot of our political situation is watering unwholesome seeds. I think the internet has had a lot to do with that, but not just that. I think we have this idea of watering these unwholesome seeds. We often think that maybe because we're doing better, we've conquered that. You will not get rid of your seed of anger. I've seen Ty angry. I know it happens. So you will not get rid of your seed of despair. You will not get rid of your seed of fear. They're there. We can tamp them down, and you can kind of see, yes, my little fear, there you are, but you will never, ever get rid of it. You can keep from going into those situations where you will water those unwholesome seeds. The fourth one, which I think is really an extraordinarily important thing, is from time to time when things are safe, invite unwholesome seeds up. Ty has this wonderful idea of bringing your anger and your fear to tea. Come in, my little fear, my depression, my anxiety. Let's have a cup of tea. Let's have a conversation about this, as if it, as in the Rumi poem, was just a wonderful friend. Here we are. We're just going to talk. We're just going to have a little bit of a cup of tea together. He talks about inviting inviting your anger and fear to tea. We have this conversation. I have this conversation a lot with people, and you may be one of those people that does this, that says, you know, my anger and my fear is so great that I'm, halfway down the line, it's 10 minutes later, I'm going, oh, I should have been mindful. Well, that's why you need to practice. And you need to practice at a time when you're not particularly angry and fearful. There is this wonderful condition, and I'm mixing traditions here, wonderful condition that Ty doesn't talk about, but a teacher called Pema Chodron talks about. It's called Shenpa. I love the word Shenpa. It's got a nice energy to it. Shenpa is when you're hooked and you're grabbed. When that anger comes up, and of course there's always righteousness with anger, isn't there? That right, that's so, they're just like, they are just so wrong. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to practice. And it doesn't matter whether you think they're right or wrong, you're just paying attention to that. But Shenpa comes and you just get hooked. You get hold on with it. And even Pema says that you should actually get this as soon as you can. And you should practice it. If you were, I'm sorry, I hate to do this to this. I know this is mostly women, but I'm going to do a baseball analogy. If you were a baseball player, and boy, you could hit that, they can't throw a fastball by you. They just can't do it. Boom, you're hitting everything. And the pitchers learn to throw you curveballs. And you can't hit a curveball worth a darn. And they keep throwing curveballs at you. And you keep striking out or hitting weak pop-ups and nothing's working. What's the most obvious answer here? You practice. You go to your batting practice pitcher and say, hey, throw me some curveballs. Let me figure out how to do this. You don't wait until the moment the curveball, you don't wait till the game, you do this at other times. So we need to step back and practice getting into our fear and anxiety. We need to invite our fear and anxiety to tea. You need to sit on the cushion, you're breathing, you're calm, and you say, I am now going to invite my fear in. Hello, my little fear. How are you today? Let's talk about what goes on. Yes, you give me that thought. I can feel my throat getting dry. I can feel my chest tightening. And it's because you are here. And thank you for having this conversation with me. So once we get into that, once we practice our fear, our anxiety, our anger, then when it comes on, we catch it earlier, as soon as we catch it. That's why I'm sad that they got rid of the title. Because that's the real practice, transformation at the base. Right here, right now, when it happens, not 5 minutes later when you finally realize, oh yeah, I'm having angry, I'm not being mindful. So you need to practice that. So that is a really important practice to wake up, to be able to take care of your anger and fear when it isn't there. Since we all do have a collective consciousness, the numbers 5 through 8 are all related to the collective consciousness. Water wholesome seeds in others. I think this is particularly good for children. I think it's really important. And remember that people need about 5 positive things to counteract one negative thing that happens to them. One criticism has the weight of 5 moments of praise. And my goodness, especially the people around you, think about all the wonderful things that they can do. I mean, yes, of course they screw up. Everybody screws up. But just think about all that sort of thing. And when you water their wholesome seeds, they become happier. They become stronger. They are more able to take care. This happiness thing that we talk about is not an individual matter. This is one of Ty's wonderful phrases. Happiness is not an individual matter. Even if you could control yourself to be that isolated, everything leaks into your stored consciousness from the collective consciousness. So water those wholesome seeds in others. And refrain from watering unwholesome seeds in others. Isn't that pretty obvious? Try not to. If you can find a way to be kind, like we were talking about in our sutra this morning, if you can find a little kindness in your heart, then you will not be angry at that person. If you can find someone, even who has no kindness in their heart, they are experiencing great suffering. Everybody, every human being is a Buddha. Even the person that you most dislike, even the person that you say, hey, you think everybody's a Buddha. Well, I'm going to tell you about my ex. No, everybody is a Buddha. And if you can touch that Buddha nature in people, that is a much better way of transforming than it is to attack them and to water their unwholesome seeds. So we need to refrain from unwatering wholesome seeds. Ty, in one of his books about terrorism, Ty was asked, well, what would you do if you had, this was when Osama bin Laden was alive, what would you do if you had to have a conversation with Osama bin Laden? He said, I wouldn't do anything. I would just listen. There's no sense in getting into that kind of thing that you are hurting people and that you are doing those things. Just having that kind of thing from listening. Numbers 7 and 8 are things we do much, much less frequently. Ask others to water your wholesome seeds. I know that sounds really peculiar, but we all need that little boost every once in a while. And if we have people that are around us, they will do that. My partner, Jane, hears that every once in a while. And if you were somebody listening in our household and I said to Jane, Jane, I think I need my seeds watered, my positive seeds watered, she, other households, they go, okay, well, where's the watering can? We'll go out to the garden and do that. But you can do that. I mean, we are so generous as people. We really are. We're so generous to everyone, and yet not to ourselves. And it isn't always that you can do it on your own. I know we're all rugged frontier Americans, And we all have thought that, yes, we can do this. We can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But sometimes we need help. So asking people to water your positive seeds, because you've got them, water your positive seeds. And of course, also ask others to refrain from watering your unwholesome seeds. And Ty is very clear about this. He says, don't let a toxic person into your life. I mean, don't try to do that. You say, I know that you have difficulties, but I would like you to please put this conversation aside and we can come at it a different way. Don't let people water your unwholesome seeds. Don't let them kind of trigger your fear of anger and fear. And they can do that so easily. So the last ones are really related to those collective consciousness things, aren't they? That kind of thing where we're all in this together. We all, whether you want to believe it or not, you just have to look around you how we're interconnected. The idea that we are really becoming a collective consciousness. We are really becoming a superorganism. And just like you wouldn't want your hand to sort of beat up your other hand, we should all be realizing that we are all together. One of the interesting things about, so how these little cells, you have zillions and zillions of cells in your body. One of the things that I find really interesting is the DNA strand, which tells everything about what we are, is 6 feet long in each cell. Isn't that amazing? It's like the length from the middle finger to middle finger, that tip wide. The difference between you and the person next to you, even very different, is about half a fingernail's width of that 6 feet. You are so much more alike than dislike. Everyone. And we all have that common. When we realize that common nature, that everybody wishes to be happy, everybody wishes to avoid suffering, and everybody really, really wants to join the collective organism. The hunter-gatherer ways have left us. We no longer have the choice, even if we wanted to do that anymore. We are a collective organism. And yes, we have to deal with such things as corporate boards and governments. But we can do that, and we can do that in a kind manner. Many of you actually, I didn't know we were going to sing it today, but it's of great interest to me. So this is related to Buddha's life. And I won't go through the whole story about how the Buddha's life unfolded so that we did these 5 remembrances. The 5 remembrances are very important for certain types of Buddhist monks. The Theravadan monks, the old school monks, they say these every single day. And they are, I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. I am of the nature to have poor health. There is no way to escape having poor health. I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. Now, it may come as no surprise that Theravadan monks are not invited to a lot of parties. But these are truths. And the whole thing is that if you just take those 4 and you go deep into it, you can sink into such despair. And actually, that's one of the criticisms about, Buddhism. You guys are talking about suffering all the time. Well, we're not talking about, yes, you are, I hear you. First, no. Okay, all right. But the 5th one, I inherit the actions in body, speech. I inherit the results of my actions in body, speech, and mind. My actions are the grounds on which I stand. That's this. These are your actions. How you water your seeds. Remember verse 6 from yesterday. The quality of our life depends on the quality of the seeds. And you have the possibility to change that. You can liberate yourself. You can do all of this. Isn't this wonderful? Who would have thought? Little old me, I can do this. This is what this is all about. So despite the fact that those 4 things in the 5 remembrances are true and may fill us with despair and longing and fear, the 5th is also true. We inherit the results of our actions. It really does happen. It really does make a difference for ourselves and for others. So getting back to the turtle. Remember the turtle? I said, so they say enlightenment is like a turtle traveling on the ocean, and there is a yellow ring on the ocean. Maybe it's an old life preserver or something. And the turtle will get enlightenment if he pops his head right through the yellow ring. That's the way it happens. That's his life. And we all know, the ocean is vast, and the ring is small, and the turtle is small. That the chance of that happening by himself, boy, that's infinitesimally small. But we all know that that's not the way it is. The turtle has help. Suppose the turtle has a yellow ring warning system. The turtle's connected to the internet. They say, turtle, I saw the yellow ring. It was off the coast of Miami. Go there. That's how it is. We can all poke our head through the yellow ring because we all have the help. None of us can do it alone, and the illusion that we can do it alone is, I think, a particular problem. For one thing, no matter how much you want to clean up your store consciousness, no matter how well you practice, you're going to get leaks from the outside. That's just the way it is. The collective consciousness will leak in. But maybe we can clean up the store consciousness of everyone. Maybe we can clean up the collective consciousness. This is how that goes. So for my personal practice, and I would recommend this for you, I ask myself this one question. Does this connect me, or does this make me further apart from everybody? If it is something that connects me, no matter how simple it is, I will continue to do it. And that sounds some really things. So, for example, I'm in my retirement, I'm learning to play the guitar a little better and learning to speak Spanish. I think, yeah, both of those things can help me connect. That's a good idea. Sitting on the sofa watching Law and Order reruns doesn't connect with me. Maybe I should do less of that. But I do that, but I'm working on getting rid of that. And things that do not connect me, and particularly things that seem to be very isolated and selfish, I abandon as much as I can. That's the very simple thing. That's the very simple thing for me to do this, is in my mindfulness practice. Does this connect? I should do this more. I should explore better ways to do this. Does this drive me away? If it drives me away from others, I should figure out ways to abandon this. I should figure out ways that this should be let go. Very simple. Very simple. So the mindfulness practice is so easy that a child could do it, and yet it's just one more pile of snow that we keep going and going and going. But you know, after you've been out in the driveway for an hour and you're halfway up there, you start to see the clearness of the pavement, and boy, it doesn't seem like such a chore anymore. The mindfulness seeps into your life in really remarkable ways. I have this wonderful arrangement with Jane. Whenever we have to have people over for dinner, I cook. She does a marvelous job of cleaning up. I love to cook, but boy, I really hate cleaning up. She's very kind about that. And mindfulness exercise of cooking, I think about 6 or 8 months ago when we were doing this, I said, I wonder if I could cook unmindfully. And I tried to be unmindful, and I couldn't. And I chopped the vegetables, or fry things in the frying pan, or mix things in a bowl. I've learned to do it mindfully at all. Here's your Surgeon General's warning. It will all become seamless in your life if you practice enough. And therefore you can kind of go on and do these things. I know that when you're starting, and many of you are beginners, that it's really difficult. And it was for me too. It was really an uphill battle. I don't want to pay attention to that. Oh boy. Oh yeah, I got rounds to make. I have to sit on a cushion. You know, that kind of thing. And now it's become relatively seamless. So there's hope. Let's put it this way. I'm one of those people who always say, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I want to end with just a poem, and then I want to comment on it. This is a wonderful poem by Thich Nhat Hanh called Our True Heritage. The cosmos is filled with precious gems. I want to offer a handful of them to you this morning. Each moment you are alive as a gem, shining through and containing earth and sky, water and clouds. It needs you to breathe gently for the miracles to be displayed. Suddenly you hear the birds singing, the pines chanting. See the flowers blooming, the blue sky, the white clouds, the smile, and the marvelous look of your beloved. You, the richest person on earth, who have been going around begging for a living, stop being the destitute child. Come back and claim your heritage. We should enjoy our happiness and offer it to everyone. Cherish this moment. Let go of the stream of distress and embrace life fully in your arms. Isn't that wonderful? I've never been around that I pine forest much after this, but I really want to think of the pines chanting. Isn't that such a wonderful, wonderful little image there? So you have been playing the role of the destitute child. And we have Ty and we have the other great teachers showing us. Here we are. You, the richest person on earth, have been going around like a destitute child. You just have to wake up. You just have to practice. You just have to take one more shovelful of snow and see the clear driveway, the beautiful sky. You can reclaim your life. Happiness is readily available to us all the time. Enjoy this precious human birth. Thank you. We have some time for questions or comments. Anybody? Yes?
Can you describe a little better the visiting, bringing your difficult emotions to tea?
Yeah.
So you described kind of bringing the body
Yeah.
sensations of it.
Yeah.
You also kind of, I don't know, I think for me to get there, we have to go back to the thoughts.
Yeah. 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 So thank you, Tina. The question about that is that if you invite your difficult emotions to tea, do you have to bring, how do you do that? And how do you bring your body and your thoughts? What should you kind of deal with? Well, the first thing about bringing is just using your imagination and your memory when you're conscious and do that. I have generally said, and I may not necessarily be correct for everybody, but I think for a lot of beginners, that it's easier to go to the body than it is to go to the thoughts. So that's why I generally recommend, under those circumstances, to go to the body. But, as I said before, there are only two things that are part of that anxiety, thoughts and body sensations. And if your thoughts are really screaming at you, if you really do need to have that particular conversation with your thoughts, then do that instead. You don't have to go to your body. But I don't want people to neglect their body either. So you sit on your cushion, in a chair, in a safe place, and you just allow these things to, you remember, last week I was angry at my boss. What did that feel like? And you recreate it in a nice, safe environment. You almost imagine yourself going through it again. This time, I'm paying attention to my breathing. This time, you might say, give a little kindness to your boss, because he's one of those angry people who has a little kindness in his heart, and if we don't help him, we're not able to do anything. Those sorts of things. But you don't have to go to the body. If thoughts are predominant, by all means do that. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Lynn?
During this retreat, I find
So Lynn's question is that she's on this retreat, and it seems like the discursive thoughts have even... Did you say that? Yeah, there they are. Congratulations on your success is what I would say. I don't know if this is happening, but I'm going to give this as a postulate and see if this is true for you. Has anybody ever heard about the extinction response? Somebody has, yes. Annie, our dog, has. So the extinction response goes like this. If you're doing a particular activity, then when you're very good at getting rid of that activity or getting rid of something difficult in your mind will ramp up. The most common example of this is you're going to an elevator, okay? You push the elevator, you want to go up 5 floors. Push the up button, nothing happened. You don't see a sign that says the elevator's out of order, but you don't hear anything happening either, so you push the button again. And you wait a few minutes. And finally you come to the conclusion, hey, this elevator, I don't think it's working, I'm going to have to climb the stairs. What's the last thing you do? You jam the button 5 times. You have to do that. That's the extinction response. Usually when people are working with discursive mind, and suddenly, after they've been doing really well, and I think on this retreat is a perfect time to work with that discursive mind becomes much more active. It is fearful about going out of business, and it's going to get your attention. Discursive mind does not go without a fight. So if you are actually being successful, if you are actually kind of taming discursive mind will up the ante at the last moment. Of course you can't get by without me. Of course you need to worry about that. What happens with this? What happens with that? And you have all of these things going on. Usually, quite frankly, it's a sign of success. And this too will pass with time. It often seems like it doesn't. It seems like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be... And I think discursive mind often wins when you say, I'm never going to be free of this. I'm giving up. Don't give up. Discursive mind will eventually calm down and say, all right, you can do this. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for your kind attention. May we have a final sound of the bell.